and in the margin it says murmured.
Yes.
So specifically, I think in 1 Corinthians 10:11,
yes,
that part of the reason he's using this illustration was the murmuring and the lusting that was going on was appetite.
That's right. That's right.
It was definitely appetite. So they're saying, give us the flesh pods of Egypt. And it said in verse 4 of Numbers 11, it says, and the mixed multitude was among them fell a lusting. So they were lusting after flesh.
Yes.
That's what it's saying here.
That's right.
And so they complained and they tempted God, as you brought out in verse 9 in 1 Corinthians. But in verse 5 of Numbers 11, it says, we remember the fish,
yep,
what you did eat in Egypt, the cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic.
And wait, Danny, it wasn't just flesh.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it says that they were complaining against the, look at, what's wrong with cucumbers, melons, leeks, and onions and garlic?
Well, let me show you something.
I want to know.
Here's something I found.
Okay.
All right. Why weren't they dying of a great plague in Egypt when they were eating the flesh then? Why are they going to eat flesh now and there's going to be a great plague and they're going to die of disease here? Because in the garlic and the leeks and the onions are natural antibiotics. Okay. And they were killing the bacteria that was in the meats, what I tell people.
And you know, I think maybe another reason too is that, you know, we had a program a while back, for those that have watched it, hopefully you did, about Cain and Abel's offerings.
Offerings, yes.
Both of them gave their best.
Right.
You know, Abel gave of his best of the flock. Cain gave, he was a farmer, Cain gave the best of his fruits.
Right.
But God told him a certain way to worship. Mm-hmm. And so that it wasn't that you give your best. Right. It was you do it God's way. And I think here too is that God said, look at, you know, I want to restore my people. Mm-hmm. Before they get into that land of Canaan, mm-hmm, I want them to be a testimony to me, right, to God. And so obviously part of that was certainly help. And mm-hmm, I want to get them so that they're mentally mm-hmm, alert and they're spiritually mm-hmm, alert. But we got to get this physical thing. And he's saying, hey, it's not that there's something wrong with a melon, like a watermelon or they call it a cantaloupe, yeah, or a muskmelon or other melons. But he was saying, look, do you believe that I'm God? Mm-hmm. Do you believe that I know what's best for you?
Yes.
You need to learn to trust and obey.
Right.
There's a song, trust and obey, for there's no other way. Trust me. I mean, I've told people this, and I mean this sincerely. If God asked me today, if he came right now in front of us, Danny, and he said, Dwight, I want you to start to crawl on your hands and knees starting tomorrow mm-hmm, for the rest of your life. Now, I have two options. I can say, God, you didn't make me to crawl on my hands and knees. I mean, you made me to walk on my feet. I mean, I can't run on my hands and knees. I can't do the work that you probably have called me to do on my hands and knees. Why in the world would you make me suffer and ask me to crawl on my hands and knees? And I don't think it's fair. I think it's okay. You created me to walk on my feet. Now, I could go that direct route if I wanted, but I could do it this way. I know the Lord loves me. I know the Lord does not want me to hurt. I know the Lord wants my happiness more than I want my happiness. Right. If he asked me to crawl on my hands and knees for the rest of my life, there's a purpose for it. And I must learn to trust the Lord for that. And so I don't want to say, Lord, why do I have to crawl on my hands and knees? Here's what I want to say, and I've said this when I've shared sermons. I've said, here's how I want to be. Lord, why can't I start right now? Why do I have to wait till tomorrow to crawl on my hands and knees? I want to start today because if it's the best for me, I don't want to wait.
So the diet that he was giving them from heaven was the best for them.
The best for that time.
And let's talk about this a minute. If I go to Psalm 78, it talks about this story again. And it talks about God's goodness to Israel and the miraculous power that he used to preserve them. It talks about the rock again, talks about him feeding them. But it says in 78:17, that's Psalm 78, verse 17, it says, and they sinned yet against him by provoking the Most High in the wilderness. They tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lust. Then it says, and they tempted God in their heart by asking meat for their lust, and they spoke against God. Can he furnish a table in the wilderness? Yes, he smote the rock, the waters gushed out. He gave us bread also, but can he provide flesh for his people? Now, let me just digress there a minute. God doesn't want to give them flesh. They want it. And I find today that a flesh-eating diet or a meat-eating diet is a major cause of sickness and disease in America today. In 1988, the Surgeon General of that time, C. Everett Koop, published a report that Americans are eating their way to the grave, and of the 2.1 million people who died each year, 1.5 were dying from diet-related diseases.
Wow.
So today we see high cholesterol in animal products, mad cow disease, tuberculosis, salmonella, E. coli, Campylobacter, Listeria, all these problems with the animal food today. And I'll just show you one. Okay, let me just show you a couple things, because let's take it home. I think that all these things happen for examples for us living in the end of time. Well, what do you do with covers of magazines like this?
Newsweek.
This is Newsweek, says, can this meat kill you? The E. coli threat is worse than you think, and safe handling instructions. Now, I definitely would put garlic leeks and onions all over that meat to keep it from killing with the bacteria.
And something else, just so that the viewers can understand too, is that if meat was safe before, because when I was young, my grandpa had his own cow and did his own milking, and they weren't putting in steroids in it and chemicals. And because we've grown to be kind of a greedy nation, we want what we want right now. We will sell stuff that we probably shouldn't if we can get a buck. Not everybody, but the nation. I'm talking about in generalities. And so what happens is the cattle, and I've driven through Texas, I've driven through places.
Factory farming.
Yeah, and they don't have the green fields they used to. And so the point of it is, what might have been safe today, let's face it, the diseases that the cattle, and there was no mad cow disease that I knew of when I was a kid, but it's happening today.
Now it's on the cover of the magazines.
Yeah.
So let me bring out something of what you just said. I too agree that the meat was healthier, let's say, or didn't have the pesticides and the chemicals and all the diseases. But my grandmother was also farming, growing gardens, and eating a lot more fruits and vegetables.
There you go.
Today, we're seeing billions and billions of pounds of burgers sold in McDonald's, and USA Today says that cow brains and spinal cords are added to hamburgers, meat, all right? So we're seeing today on the cover how this could be an epidemic. I read a book, and it was called, not Beyond Beef, another one, but it was talking about mad cow disease, and it was by a Pulitzer Prize author in there, and it was called Deadly Feasts. And he said this: by the year 2015, we may be seeing as many as 200,000 British people dying a year that are already infected with mad cow disease. So you get
in other words, what you're saying is it might not affect you the minute you eat it.
It has an incubation period that it may take time. But here's my point, is God said, don't eat the flesh of Egypt. And there's problems with a flesh diet. Science is proving that it increases cancer because of the fat, increases cancer because of the protein. There's no fiber in it, increases colorectal cancer. It's proven today. But here's another one. This is colon cancer linked to red meat. And this is saying that if you eat it just once a day, you have a 250% increased rise of developing colon cancer. So God says, don't eat the meat. I have a better diet for you, and it's a plant-based diet. So they complained and they murmured and said, no, I want my Big Mac. That's what they were saying. I want my Kentucky Fried Chicken.
And you know, here's the deal that too, is that when is it, you know, and I just want to, I guess, the audience that's watching right now, look at, when are we going to learn to trust and obey in the Lord? I mean, back in their day, they didn't have the scientific evidence. But God said
But God knew.
God knew, because He knows everything. That's why He had a diet. And it isn't just that we don't get cancer. It's so that He doesn't want just a bunch of healthy sinners. He wants people that are healthy, so what, they can glorify Him with their spiritual bodies too. And the thing of it is that He was trying to get the people back then to trust Him and to obey. Today we've got the medical science that proves it. And some of us say, I don't care what the science says, I like what I like. And so in other words, it's shown that the human nature of man and woman has not changed. It's probably only got more selfish.
Well, you know, I say it this way. The first temptation on Adam and Eve in the garden was appetite.
That's right.
Right? The serpent came and said, here, has God said that if you eat from this tree that you will die? And she says, yes, the Lord said that. The first temptation upon Christ by the devil in the wilderness after He fasted 40 days was what?
Appetite.
Turn the bread